but you came and pulled me up so I could breathe.
Welcome to Rescued for Women, where women share stories of how their messes were turned into messages of hope.
And all you did was forgive me.
Welcome back to Rescued for Women. We're so excited that you joined us again. And tonight we have Breanna Gruver with us, and she's going to share her story. I'm super excited. Breanna's story is one that you're probably going to want to get the tissues out for. And I know that her story is going to impact a lot of women, and I'm just super excited that you said yes. You were one of the very first people that I thought of when Megan and I started this. And I know that you had a pretty yucky situation that was transformed into a message of hope.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to take any more time. I want you to just go ahead and start. And
well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm glad for the opportunity to share my story. So I will say, growing up, I grew up going to church. I was religious, I would say. I was involved with youth group. You know, I was a good kid. I never strayed or anything like that. My husband and I, when we started dating, we went on a missions trip together. But then both of our religions were so different that we had to find common ground. So we ended up COD, and we just, you know, in the early parts of our marriage, we both kind of started to not make honoring choices. And so we had our daughter Ella in 2009. Everything was fine. Pregnancy went great, no issues. The thought of losing her never crossed my mind. I was very naive, and you know, and it was a blessing, and we had her. And then in January of 2013, I got pregnant again. We weren't trying, and my initial reaction was, uh-oh. I mean, and looking back, I'm like, why did I say uh-oh? But that was my initial reaction. And I didn't realize I wanted a baby. But then when I did get pregnant, I started to fall in love with the baby and the idea of the baby. And then March 2013, so about 8 weeks later, we lost the baby at about 8 weeks along. And that was it was hard. So then I knew I wanted to start trying again, because now this desire was in my heart. And I did get pregnant again in September of 2013. And everything was going really well. And then everything changed in December. It was December 16th, 2013. And do you ever have a moment where you replay it over and over in your head, and you just, like, you can't get just everything about it, you just replay? That was my moment, because I went to the doctors and they couldn't find the heartbeat with the Doppler. So she's like, well, maybe it's just too early. I was about 16-ish weeks, and she's like, well, maybe it's the position, and you know. So they're like, let's go over and do an ultrasound. I went over to the ultrasound room, and the lady had the probe on my belly, and I'll never forget the look on her face. And I'm looking at her, and I'm by myself, because my husband was at work.
I was just gonna ask you that.
Yeah, I was by myself, and I kept looking at her face, and she was just scanning and scanning. And then she looked at me, and she said, I'm sorry, Breanna, the baby died.
Oh.
And I remember I didn't feel much because I was in shock at the moment. And I remember just staring at the wall, and they were talking to me saying, do you want me to call your husband? Do you want me to call somebody? And I couldn't speak. I was complete shock at that point. And I kind of, for years, even still, I just relive that moment where she looked at me and said that. And I had to go through being induced and labor and everything. And there's something to be said about going through labor. It's different when you're going through labor to bring home a baby. But when you're going through the pain, knowing you're not going to be able to bring that baby home is really difficult. So that was hard. And the night that we got home from the hospital, I was so like out of body. I was just so devastated, and I went to the bathroom, and all I remember is hitting the floor on my knees and just like screamed in desperation because I was so heartbroken and empty. And remember, prior to this, we weren't really going to church regularly, so I didn't have the hope of Jesus to lean into in that moment. But when I hit my knees, I cried out and I screamed, and it was like the worst day of my life, but the best day of my life, because in that moment, I just felt Jesus all around me, and my husband literally had to pick me off the floor and carry me to bed because I couldn't walk. Like it was such a powerful moment in so many ways. Powerful because I had just completely succumbed to my human self and my own strength. I didn't have it anymore. I was at that point where I couldn't do it, and I hit my knees, and from that moment on, God began to work in me, and like there was no turning back after that. And it's, you know, as I go on here, you'll see I've gone through more and more difficulties, but it was different because I had Jesus now to lean into, and I didn't have that before. So it was very hard, but it brought me back to Jesus. And I always say, like, I thank my son, like, Landon, like I would love to hold you, but my goodness, like you brought me back to Jesus. You're the reason I'm back with Jesus, and I'm so grateful for that. And it was hard in the days moving forward, and you know, God's grace and peace, I felt all that, but it was still so challenging, and it took me a long time to kind of get back to a mental state of being able to go back to work. And you know, physically I healed pretty quickly, but mentally and emotionally it took some time. And I from then on struggled with jealousy. I mean, the thoughts of jealousy are a real thing, and I would see, like suddenly I had my son, my stillborn son, and now every woman I run into is pregnant. She's pregnant, you know, baby showers. Like those are the types of things that you don't think about until you've gone through a loss, because now suddenly you're having to literally face these women who are, you know, did nothing to you, but you're so jealous because that should be you. That's what you want. So I will say though that there's a verse in Romans 12:15 that I say stumbled upon, but I know God led me to it one day. And rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn. And that verse like slapped me upside the head, because it was like God telling me, if somebody is in a good season of their life and they're having a baby and it's exciting, you should be excited for them. If they're in a bad season and they're struggling, you come alongside and you hold you hold their hand and help them. So
that's powerful.
Every time I would start to get jealous throughout all the next couple years, rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn, just repeat in my head, because I mean, my human self is like, you know, getting so mad, and why can't that be me, and why me, why do, you know, be self-pity, and but I really leaned into that verse, and it helps me to kind of snap out of it, get myself back, and not let those thoughts of jealousy really take over. So moving forward, so that was December 2013. I got pregnant again, July 2014. I lost the baby around 4 or 5 weeks, so it was an early loss. Again, pregnant, November 2014, 6 weeks, lost the baby. And then they did discover something that they thought they could surgically help me, and a reason why I was losing the babies. I kept losing babies. So I had surgery February 2015 to correct the problem. And then in the meantime, I got pregnant in May. I lost the baby again. So I'm thinking, okay, well, the surgery is going to fix all my issues. Got pregnant after the surgery, lost another baby around 7 weeks. So then in September 2015, got pregnant again. And you can imagine, I mean, the emotional roller coaster of pregnant, not pregnant, pregnant. So you almost became accustomed to, you get numb, you really do. And you almost expect it, which is terrible. And it really started, even my daughter, she started to, if I would say, because we stopped telling her I was pregnant because it was just too much. And it was really sad because we were trying to protect her because her first reaction is, are we going to lose this baby? And for a child to ask and assume that that's just what's going to happen, like that's natural and normal. Yeah, it crushed me. So we stopped telling her. So then when I did get pregnant, finally around like Christmas time, I was about 17 weeks at the time around Christmas. I'm like, okay, you know what? We've now reached the point past when we lost our son Landon. And I was like, let's tell our daughter. Let's tell her I feel good. We told her. She was so excited. It was a little girl. Her name is Emma. And it was January 11th. Again, I go for a routine appointment. They can't find the heartbeat. I know, it's like I can't make this up. It's just I still look back and think, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this kept happening. So I went in for a routine appointment. Again, they couldn't find a heartbeat. Went over for an ultrasound, and while I'm walking to the ultrasound, I'm thinking, this can't be happening again. This cannot be happening again. This is not happening. And I went in, and they found her right away, and her heart had stopped. And I just...
What week was that for you again?
So 18 weeks.
Knowing what you were going to endure.
I knew what I was going to endure.
Goodness.
And I went in and I had to be induced, and it was pretty intense labor. They didn't know why. With my son Landon, they discovered he had a virus, which was it was fifth disease that had crossed over and killed him, which is super rare to happen. And with her, they're like, we don't know why, but when I delivered her, the cord was around her neck 3 times. So that's why she passed away. And the doctor, even when she came out, she was like, oh my gosh. Like she saw immediately the cord like around, so she unraveled it, and I got to hold her and be with her. And my biggest, when we went to leave the hospital, one of the hardest moments of my life was walking away from her, because they thankfully let her stay with me for a long time. And when it was time to go, I remember I was in the wheelchair and she was laying in a bassinet, and I kept looking at her and looking like this is the last time I'm gonna see her here on earth. And the nurse came in, and I'll never forget her because my husband had left to go get the car, and she said to me, she came in and I said, I can't leave her. Like, it's almost like I know she's not, her soul was not here, but I couldn't leave her. And the nurse, she came over and she's like, I will stay with her. I know, she's like my angel here on earth. as they were wheeling me out, she was in the bed holding her and praying over her. And that's the only reason I was able to leave that room. Like, whew. I saw her years later when I did end up having a child, and as soon as I saw her, she came in and to do vitals on me, and I just sat there and stared at her, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I just started bawling because then I told her, she's like, "I remember that." Like, she remembered that, and it was just amazing. Like, that was a pretty powerful moment. But so the difference, though, I would say with Emma versus Landon was I had this hope this time. So I lost Emma and I was devastated and I wanted to keep her, you know. But I just had I now had this joy that only comes from Jesus that no circumstance can ever take away. So I had this joy, even though I was sad, that it's really hard to explain unless you've experienced it yourself. And so I don't.
Peace that passes all
Yeah,
understanding.
exactly.
I say that verse all the time because it is, you know, a lot of people who were raised in the faith, it's almost a cliche verse that you throw around, but
when you have it, it really is the only way to describe that.
It makes no
peace.
sense.
It's overwhelming.
It is.
People would look at you and be like, "How do you feel that way?"
Yeah, and how are you holding it together? How are you still smiling? You know, because. But I did. I was sad. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was horrible, and I was sad, and I had moments of laying in bed all day and not wanting to do anything, and you know. But just that peace, that joy, that nothing can take away from me. You know, and so
that feeling of it's going to be okay.
Yes.
Like, even though you want to lay here and cry, and God's like, you know,
do that.
It's okay. You can grieve.
Yeah.
Even Jesus wept.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. And he wept at a human loss.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Whew. Yeah. It's so true. And we continued for the next year to try and get pregnant again, and we spent our life savings on fertility treatments, and because we thought that was the only way it was going to happen. And so we finally in January of 2017 were like, maybe this is not, we had ran into somebody, not a coincidence, but who had said to us about fostering to adopt. And we're like, we never considered that. Maybe this is all happening because we're supposed to go that way. So we started to pray about it, and we went to an informational session in February of 2017 and about the process, and we left there and we went into the car, my husband and I, and we both looked at each other and said, this isn't right. Like, something felt off. Like, we didn't feel like
that feeling.
we it sounded like a great idea to us, and we're like, maybe this is it, you know, this is the door God's leading us through. And it's funny how we plan things, and he's like, no.
We aren't
No.
the planner.
No.
It's crazy how that happens.
We try to orchestrate our lives, and you know, didn't work that way. So
I'm glad you said that, though, because I do think so many people in that situation, I've been there. Like, I maybe that is the way we're supposed to go.
Yeah.
But it is, it's like, we're not in control.
No, and even in all the fertility treatments and stuff that we did, you know, like, I'm a planner. I'm a control freak by nature, and I want to plan things out, and I want things to go accordingly. And I think this has also taught me a lot of things, but one of the big things it's taught me is that I need to let go of that, you know, and I need to trust in God and not in my own abilities, you know, and because you know, we said that it didn't feel right. Well, the next month we stopped trying because I just couldn't do it anymore. I was exhausted, emotionally, physically, and the next month I was pregnant. And my sweet little rainbow baby is now 3.5 years old. And it's just amazing to see. But I will say, even once I got pregnant with Claire, I really struggled in trusting that it was going to be okay, because every other time it ended up in heartache. So for my whole family, it was challenging, not just me. I mean, my husband, my daughter, my mom, you know, like everybody really struggled because we're just waiting for the phone call to say. So I had a verse that whenever I went to a doctor's appointment, I would get so sick to my stomach, like impending doom. Like I just, you know, would be so sick to my stomach, and the fear was real and the anxiety was real. And the verse that I would cling to is Psalm 112, verse 7. They will have no fear in bad news. Their hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord. And I would sit there before I go into my appointments. For the entire 9 months, I would sit there and I would say, they would have no fear in bad news. They're steadfast, trusting in the Lord. And I would repeat it over, even while I was getting every ultrasound, because I was considered high risk with all my losses. Every ultrasound, every test, I was repeating this verse over and over just to keep myself from losing my mind, because that's how I felt. And the moment she came out and she cried,
I can't even.
I mean, there was a whole bunch of people praying you through,
absolutely,
and waiting to hear.
Oh, and I felt that.
No, but I can't imagine even being them, like waiting by
everybody.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember almost being scared to ask how your doctor's appointment went.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want you to hurt again. You know.
I know.
And praying at every appointment she would go into. You're quoting scripture, and I know there were so many people praying for each and every single appointment.
I know, and I felt that, and that's helped me so much, and I'm so grateful for that, because I don't know how I couldn't have walked that by myself. My husband and I mean, I'm so thankful for our church family and our friends and just everyone who came and just like laid hands on us. And I remember in our mom's necks and them just laying hands on me and just you know, praying for the safety of this baby. And
can I ask you this, Bree?
Sure.
The connection, like, do you remember, because of the loss, like, did you feel that connection, or almost were you a little guarded because you
had no connection? And it's sad, and I'm thankful that it has not affected our relationship, her and I. But I was so good at building up a wall that I didn't get her room ready till after she arrived. I didn't do anything. I had no clothes. I had nothing, because I did not want to even buy one item
to come home.
Because and she to like end up coming home and her not being there. And she would kick. I mean, I didn't talk to her. It's terrible, but I had my wall up, my guard up, and I was preparing myself. And the best I could do was to not get close to her and not feel a connection. And it makes me really sad but that's the reality, and that's
but I think
the
that's
situation.
What women need to hear, because I think, like you said, before we started, Bree had said that people don't talk about this, and that is a very real emotion that I think women end up feeling ashamed because of feeling that. But it is, it's like preparing yourself and knowing you're not in control. You know, like it's
and there's no guilt or shame to be had there. Like,
it's not.
As much as you said you feel guilty, you need to release yourself from that, because you were protecting your heart, and
I think that's
God understands that. He gets it. He knows that what he asked you to walk through was hard. And I don't know if you see yet exactly why he asked you to walk through all he did, but I have a feeling he's going to use it in some way, in some big and mighty way, and I know that you trust that.
I do.
Yeah.
I already see it. I mean, I've been able to use my story to help other women through, you know, this losses and infertility and stuff, and it's been healing to me at the same time. But I feel like it's my testimony, you know, it's my story, and it's full of pain and heartache, but joy and overcoming, these trials. And now I have this testimony.
And there's no bitterness and anger towards God.
No.
But that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, so many women, I think,
couldn't say that.
Yeah. Well, and I think I think before I hit my knees that night with Landon, there was a lot of bitterness and anger. But that was completely removed. I mean, I questioned, of course, I think that's our nature, and why is this happening? I'm like, but I also, in the same breath, would say, I know there's a reason for this, and looking back, Landon brought me back to Jesus. Emma taught me the lesson of letting go of control, and the freedom that comes from that, being especially the type A person that I am and the control freak that I am. So there, some people never know why things happen to them, but I feel like I know why they happen to me. And
you let go and you let God after Emma. Yeah. And then he gave you Claire.
He did.
And she's
the
beautiful.
She's the best. So yeah, it's a pretty,
Can you take our viewers to the place, if you don't mind? Oh, like I can hardly handle this. Like hearing her cry for the first time. Because I think that is such an important moment, especially because so many women are going through this right now. Yeah. That I feel like that hope. Like, what did you say? If you're breathing, there's hope. Yeah. Like, it really gives you like the full testimony to that statement of if you're breathing, there's hope. But hearing her breathe, especially not really having a connection, even though you feel kicks and you have appointments, and that is such a moment. I think that's powerful for you.
It was everything, the entire wall that I had built, and the lack of connection was instantly restored. Like, I can't even, there are no words in this entire world that describes the moment she came out for my husband and I, and it was like for the first time in 5 years I could, like, I breathed for the first time, like she breathed and I breathed for the first time, and I really can't describe it. Yeah, it was an indescribable moment. Wow. Yeah.
But you felt peace?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I think that
it just washed over, I'm sure.
Yeah. Unlike your husband, touch on that just for a moment, because I think so many men don't know how to struggle next to their wives going through this, because they say, but it's your body, or they shut down. Yeah. Like, that moment for him, like, just he
it was the same. He felt the same way. And, and I gotta, for the dads out there, like, I feel like they don't get the opportunity either, because a lot of times we make it about the women, and he really struggled too. It was hard for him, and not just, it was hard in a different way, but it was still hard. Yeah. He still had the hopes of these babies and the dreams of these babies, and then on top of that, he had to watch his wife struggling,
not being able to fix it.
Yeah, and not be able to fix it because they want to fix it, and they want to, my husband was such a blessing the whole time, just so understanding of my train wreck of emotions, and like,
that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I feel like in that moment when Claire was born, we both
release.
Yeah, it was like a release. Like, everything we had went through, because it was a 5-year period of just constant trials and like punch after punch after punch. And
what would you say to the woman whose husband isn't supportive, who maybe just doesn't understand, hey, why are you so upset?
Or why
get over it, or whatever. Right.
What would you say to them, because they may feel very alone?
I say find support. Reach out to me or somebody. Chances are we all know somebody who's experienced this, and some people just don't talk about it. And it is amazing too. I will say that in walking through this, the amount of people that have said, oh my gosh, that happened to me too.
Yeah.
And you're like, really? I didn't know that. And it was very enlightening to me about, you know, how many people have gone through it. So I would say if they don't have support in their spouse or their boyfriend or whatever, find their support there.
Yes.
There's groups, there's, you know, mentorships within churches and stuff, and that's something that I've been trying to be involved with, is, you know, being a contact person for somebody walking through this,
It's
because
huge. You
I
can't
know
do it
how
alone.
important it is. Yeah, you can't do it alone.
Yeah.
And especially if you haven't had the moment that you did
Yeah,
because of Landon.
yeah.
You know, like,
This could have been all so different.
Yes.
And I don't know where I would have been, because I was not in a good place before that happened, and I could have spiraled pretty easily.
Yeah.
So I definitely would encourage you to seek help and to find somebody that can walk beside you, because you need it.
Wow.
You need it. You can't
do it alone. And you certainly can't do it without God.
Absolutely.
He's the number
Oh my
one,
gosh.
you know.
so
Is
after
the-
Claire, were you done?
Oh,
You're done.
ship has sailed.
Yeah.
I know. I always, people say like, oh, you can have another one. We are so content and we feel complete, and I just feel like emotionally, physically, mentally, I could. Jesus would get me through it. I know he would, but we feel complete, and you know, she was our missing piece of the puzzle that
That's
we
amazing.
longed for 5 years. We waited for her, and
Does she realize how special
she
is?
doesn't.
She has no clue
She
yet.
Not
has
yet.
no, yeah,
Not yet.
she will. She'll know, and just even her big sister, like when she was born, when Claire was born, Ella was 8.
Yeah.
So she was old enough to understand what was happening, and she even struggled in her own way, because she started developing anxiety and like separation anxiety from me while I was pregnant. And really, I think a lot of it was because she was so afraid.
She was nervous.
That I
Talk
would lose
about
the
her
baby.
for a moment if you can,
Yeah.
because I do think, it's wild. You had a healthy
Siblings.
pregnancy
Yeah.
with her.
Yeah, no
And
complications.
how old were you? Do you mind me asking?
I was 25 when I had Ella.
Wow.
Yeah, I was
Oh,
25,
wow.
and then 33 when I had Claire.
Because
So
I think they attribute.
Yeah.
I just had Callie, and I was 36, and that was advanced maternal
Yeah,
age, and I
right.
hate that word.
I know.
But you say,
do
it
attribute.
only happens when you're
older.
And that's not true.
And it's not.
Wow.
Yeah, because Ella was 3 when we started trying. So I was 28 when it all
Still
happened.
even, wow.
Yeah.
So I was
Man.
younger, and so Ella, she understood, but she was, every time we would lose a baby, she had that hope of Jesus all along. Well, you
Isn't
know,
that
like,
childlike
it's the
faith?
childlike faith, you
That
know,
the Bible
Mommy, it's
talks
gonna be
about.
okay. And it was really cool to see. And
Wow.
now, like, looking back, I'm like, goodness, if I could have just been like her, you know, how she was just so faithful, and then holding her baby sister for the first time,
I can't
So
even
beautiful.
imagine.
my heart was just like, oh, I can't take it, it's gonna burst.
Yeah.
And
She's a good big sister.
she's
too,
a good
isn't
big
she?
sister. Yep, she's fantastic. She's
That's
so great.
awesome.
And
It's wild to say this word, and it like keeps coming into my head, because I'm like sitting here like thinking, I don't know. I mean, yes, if you have God as your center, you find the strength because of Him.
Yeah.
But sitting here to say blessed,
Mm-hmm.
it like in a situation like yours is such an unreal. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like it's hearing you talk about them, both Emma and Landon, as turning points in your life.
Mhm.
I mean, it's wild.
The
Yes.
lessons learned.
Yes.
And, I mean, like, you can say that, and I don't know that anybody who doesn't have Jesus
You couldn't.
could do that.
And that's what I say all the time. I said, I don't know how people who don't have Jesus get through this,
Yeah.
because I know what it was. I got to experience both. I got to experience what it was like without Jesus, and then I got to experience what it was like with Jesus.
Yes.
Game
Totally
changer.
Yeah,
Totally different.
And not that one was not that the second time wasn't
No.
painful. And I think so for me to kind of relate to your story, I had infant loss after I had 5 children. The infant loss began for me. And so I had Jesus. I remember Eric looking at me at the appointment where they told us that, you know, the baby was gone, and I was second trimester. And I remember him saying when we left there, I don't know if I could be so strong if you weren't so strong in Christ. Like, he saw the hope and the peace that God had given me. And he was a, you know, fairly new believer. And I was able to give that to my husband. You know, but it is very different. My journey is very different from yours because I had all these babies. Right? And it looked so different. And there are women out there that might, you know, go through this, the same type of like loss and that kind of thing, but each situation is very different. But at the end of the day, the only way you get through it is with the hope that you find in Christ. You know?
And I always had that hope. Even though we had stopped trying, I just knew, like, and people are like, why do you keep trying? Why are you doing this to yourself? And I knew, I don't know, I just had this hope that it was going to be okay. And you know, and that's another thing I think that's important to say is some people, I would get comments like, well, at least you have Ella.
That's awful.
Or, you know, and
we need to talk about that.
Because I think it's
what not to say. Could you talk to me about, I mean, this is really important.
Yeah.
It's huge. What not to say to somebody in that situation.
I mean, I think, like, it'll be okay. Like, you'll be fine in a couple weeks. You'll get over it. At least you already have a child.
Or it was early.
That's another one. It's like, it was only 5 weeks. I'm sorry. A loss is a loss.
Listen to that.
And
say
when
that
you're,
again.
A loss is a loss is a loss.
Yes.
I don't care if you're 4 weeks and you just found out yesterday, or if you're 40 weeks.
Yes.
A loss.
It's a soul that you had hoped for and you have started to plan for.
Right.
And you start, you know, they're a part of you.
It's what we do.
And then also let's talk about if you are out there and you had a loss early and didn't feel that connection. That's okay too.
Right.
Like the way that we handle
Don't discredit that.
Don't discredit that.
So many people do.
You know, but you're right. I mean, early, late, it doesn't. You know,
it's a loss.
It's a loss.
And I think if women like hold on to that because so many people do try to discredit that.
Well, and me telling my story, I've heard so many times that it makes me so angry is they'll say, oh gosh, I don't know how you went through that. I mean, my story's not like yours. I was only like 8 weeks, 1 month. And I'm like, don't do that. Like,
but they were made to
they
feel
were
by somebody walking their journey.
They were kind of comparing as if their story was less than mine, and it's not.
It's not.
I have to say this though, and I want this to come out correctly. But as you're sitting here, and I know, I can't even say it, that Landon and Emma aren't here, but I feel them, like in your story, because they are so, like that power to bring you to God and have Him as your center, like they are very much part of you.
I hope they're proud of me.
But they are, like, it's beautiful, it's sad, but the ending, I don't know.
And you have the hope that one day you'll be reunited in heaven, right?
It is.
Because when you know Christ as your Savior, we're guaranteed and promised the hope of eternity, and you know, you're gonna see Him.
I can't
wait. You know?
But
It's
it
gonna
makes
be
that not so
amazing.
scary either.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
like knowing you will. You know,
Right.
Oof. What a reunion that's gonna be.
Yes. What a day that will be.
Yeah.
When my Jesus I shall see.
Yes.
And then you're gonna see your children right there by His side, and they've been cared for by the one who created them, the one who can love them better than you.
And that's
or
another thing I say.
anyone else can.
I'm like, if anyone's gonna take them from me, I'm so glad it's Jesus.
Mm.
Because what
You
better
are
place to
unreal.
be?
Mm.
I mean, like that, isn't that
In
the
the arms
ultimate
of
goal for
Jesus.
all of us?
Yes.
Is I want to be in Jesus' arms, and they
Are
got
there.
to bypass this crazy
Right.
world and go right
If
there.
you're
I
gonna be
didn't-
jealous, that's the thing to
I
be
didn't
jealous
want it to
about.
be, I didn't want it
Yes.
to come out sounding creepy,
No,
but it's like when
no,
you
it's
talk
not.
about them, and I think also women end up not discussing that, and almost because they're not physically here,
Yeah.
that they aren't a part. They are a huge part of you, your family.
I really try to talk about them
Oh.
because, and that's another thing I would encourage you if you've lost a baby to talk about them, include them in conversation. You know, like, I mean, it's not like I'm every single day talking about them, but I still like, oh, today, you know, Emma, and or Landon this and Landon that, and they were here for a very short time, but they mattered.
Yeah.
Their
you know?
impact is life.
Yeah, and I
Lifelong.
want to share that. I want people to remember them.
And
Because
let me
without
ask you
Landon-
another question. Do you have pictures of your
I
babies?
do.
So I want to talk about that. I've heard parents say before, you know, that's, or people, women say, that's creepy, why do you have that? I want any woman out there that has a picture of their baby like that to know it's okay.
It is
And if
Absolutely.
you want to put that on the wall,
I
because
have
that's
it on
all
the
you
wall.
do. You have it on the
So
wall?
it's not on the wall. It's on the so there was a picture of Ella holding Emma, and I have it framed on our mantle.
Oh, see, and that's okay.
Because
And
she's a part of your
your
Our
family.
family. Yeah.
whether
Like,
she
yeah.
lived for hours, days, months,
Right.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, she was a living, breathing human being.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Wow.
And I think, you know, some women, and that's I guess another thing too. If you do experience a loss, with Landon, I didn't take a lot of pictures because I was in such a bad place mentally. But with Emma, as soon as it happened, I'm like, we've got to take pictures. Everyone's getting a picture with her, like because
Just that
I wanted
alone
to remember
shows.
her.
yeah,
Yeah, that alone
it
shows
shows
the
the
growth.
difference
Yeah.
in
It is
where
wild.
you were.
Yeah.
One
you
versus
know?
the other.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so we got pictures with her, and
Wow.
I took pictures of every little finger and every little toe.
But I love that because
Yeah.
that you are her mother.
Yeah.
And there's nothing. What do you say to the woman who didn't? And I feel like I'm like Ella is your
Ella's my oldest. Yeah, she's
So to the woman who doesn't have an Ella,
11.
Right.
and I know it's hard for you to maybe speak on that because you didn't, but
Yeah.
you also, when you had Ella, you had not had Jesus as your center.
Right.
So I do feel like you kind of can speak on that because of having Claire
Yeah.
and taking her home.
Yeah.
So what would you say to her?
Well, you know, and I will say that I've also done what other women have done, where I say I've experienced this, but I had a child, so I kind of minimalize myself a little bit. So I'm
It is
totally
the first.
guilty.
Claire is the first, kind of.
I
in
say
that
not to do
sense.
that, but I do it myself. But I think it just all boils down to no matter what situation you're in, what your story looks like, having that hope that it's gonna be okay. It doesn't matter if you have one child or you have 5 children already, and if you go through a loss, just finding that peace is
The peace that
It's
only God
priceless.
can bring.
Yeah.
And that's,
Mm.
yeah. I think that's a really good place to end,
I
because
agree.
ending on the message that God can bring hope in any messy, sticky situation. Do you want to add anything else before we close our time?
I don't. I'm just so thankful for what I went through, which is so
I love
odd
it.
do
to
too.
say.
I love it.
I mean, I
I
never
love
5 years ago would have been like,
Yeah,
you're thankful for.
yeah,
Don't get me wrong, it hurt.
yeah.
It's
It
life
was
changing.
bad.
We can still tell. We can still see
Yeah,
the
I mean,
pain
it's
when you
still
talk
like
about
all
it.
these years later, like it hurts, and so I don't want to dismiss the pain because it's real.
Right.
But I also don't want to dismiss the fact that Jesus saved me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and from myself, from the moments of pain, he saved me over and over, and that's what he does. He has come to our rescue probably more than we even know.
Exactly.
And
that's what this is,
Yeah.
Rescue
Yeah.
for Women.
how about that?
That was
Didn't even
perfect.
try that.
That was not scripted. I
No, it was just perfect
And see,
timing.
we were talking about God speaking,
Yes.
through me,
Yes.
and look
Yes.
at that.
Mm.
Yes.
Perfect.
Rescued for Women. That's what we're about. And I know there are a lot of women out there who have watched our stories so far, and maybe you're thinking, well, they talk about the hope that Jesus can bring, and I don't know how to get into that relationship with Jesus. I want to encourage you, reach out to us if you want more information on what it means to be a follower of Christ and how you can have that hope too. But also don't downplay the fact that right from where you are, no matter what situation you're in, whether you're in your car, whether you're in your living room, whether you're in your bedroom, whether you're jogging, you can cry out to Jesus, and he is just waiting for you to call on his name, and he is waiting to offer you the salvation that he died to give you. So just don't hesitate.
Yeah, don't
hesitate. Don't hesitate to take that step and to reach out to Jesus, reach out to us, and rescuedforwomen@gmail.com, rescued with the number 4@gmail.com. And we would love to hear from you. We'd love to hear if you have a story that you want to share.
Yes, we would love that. And Facebook activity. I'm going to start Instagram. I didn't get to tell you that.
Yeah.
So we will be taking, I don't want to say application, but like if you have a story and you want to share it, do not hesitate to reach out.
Yes. We look forward to hearing from you. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
I was drowning in the water, but you came and pulled me up so I could breathe. I was hurting with all my problems, and all you did was forgive me. 'Cause I